Have you ever felt like there is something ancient moving within the silence of the world? As if the wind carried echoes of a memory that does not belong to this era. Perhaps this is what the ancient Norse called Ragnarok, not just the end of the world, gods, but the echo of a cosmic memory recorded in the Earth's unconscious, a twilight that does not speak of destruction, but of remembrance. They say that before the end, the sun will go out, the moon will bleed, and the very sound of creation will fade away. It will break like ancient ice. But what if all this is not prophecy, but memory? If you feel like certain things are no coincidence, maybe this video is what you needed to hear, because what we call myth may be the forgotten language of the soul, and Ragnarok, your deepest words. In Norse tradition, the end begins with the sound of a horn, the Gjallarhorn. They say your touch crosses worlds, awakening forces dormant since the beginning of the times. It is the call that echoes between kingdoms, waking up gods, giants, and men. But what if that sound isn't just metaphor? What if it is a symbol of something that vibrates in the universe? An ancient frequency that resonates whenever a cycle ends. Humanity has many names for the same shudder. The Hindus call it pralaya, the Mayans call it the end of the sun, the alchemists call it the death of the old world, the Norse called it Ragnarok, the fate of the gods. But in all these languages there is a pattern, a collapse, followed by a light that reborn. The end is just the pause between two breaths of eternity. Ragnarok is not just the end of the cosmos. It is the mirror that creation uses to remember who it is. The fire that consumes Asgard also purifies the human heart. The serpent that rises from the sea does not destroy. She remembers. Each myth speaks of the same hidden truth. Everything that dies returns. Today, when the world seems again on the brink, perhaps the real Ragnarok not in heaven, but within us. In the collapse of certainties, in the fall of the divinities that we created to avoid facing our own empty. Perhaps we are hearing the horn of awakening again. The time of the end is the time of awakening, and every soul who hears it knows, nothing really ends. If something inside you is awakening, stay until the end. The answer may be here. Before there was silence, there was a sound, and before the sound, there was only the presentiment, the instant when the universe takes hold of the breathing. It was in this interval that, according to the ancients, destiny began to move. The Norse believed that Ragnarok would not come as a sudden explosion, but like an inevitable song, an ancestral song, sung by the forces of the cosmos that would form the very fabric of reality. Shudder. First, eternal winter, Fimbulvetur, 3 seasons without sun, where the earth is covered in ice and men forget the heat. The stars, one by one, begin to disappear. The celestial wolves swallow the sun and the moon. And at the center of it all, the wind brings a sound, serious, distant, almost human. It is the Gjallarhorn, blown by Heimdall, the guardian of the bridge between the worlds. Its sound traverses dimensions, waking the gods of Asgard and the giants of Jotunheim. The seas rise in fury, and the serpent Jormungandr awakens from the abyss. Its immense body contorts in the water, causing waves that swallow continents. From the northern ice comes Fenrir, the ravening wolf. With each step he tears up the ground of the world, and on the final battlefield, Odin, the father of all, rides towards the destiny he himself predicted. But Ragnarok is not just destruction. It's a cosmic ritual. The ancients did not fear it as the end, but recognized it as the fulfillment of the wheel. For them, the universe was a living being that died and was reborn in cycles, and Ragnarok would be just another of his breaths, a purification through the fire and ice. The poets of the Eddas said that the sky would split into light and darkness, that the gods would fall not out of weakness but out of loyalty to their own destiny, because even the divine needs to die to remember what created it. The fire of Surtur, the flame giant, is not punishment, it is remembrance. It burns to make room for the new world that sleeps beneath the ashes of the old. When everything is accomplished, the sagas say, the earth will be reborn green, the sea will recede, and a new sun will emerge from the horizon, the sun of the previous one. 2 humans, Leif and Leifthrassir, will emerge from a sacred forest, survivors of the fire. They will walk among ruins in silence, rebuilding their lives from memory. And in this new time, the sound of the Gjallarhorn will no longer be an announcement of war, but the first chord of creation. There is something deeply human about this myth, because we all, at some point, face Ragnarok itself. When certainties crumble, when love leaves, when the fire of change burns everything that was safe. It's the same song, silent, inevitable, purifying. The outer world and the inner world always mirror each other. The end of the cosmos and the end of a soul are expressions of the same dance. This is why the ancients did not fear the final fire. They revered him. They knew that every flame that consumes also illuminates, that every fall carries within it the promise of return. And when the last sound dies away, perhaps we will discover that the song of the end was always the one song of new beginnings. But what if this myth is more than metaphor? What if what we call a prophecy is but the distant echo of a real memory, of something that heaven itself witnessed millennia ago? What if Ragnarok wasn't just a myth, but a fragmented memory of something what really happened, not on earth, but above it? A celestial memory, kept in myths like someone hiding fire inside a stone. Ancient people looked at the sky as a mirror of the soul. Everything that happened in the stars was reflected on earth, and vice versa. So when they spoke of gods at war, perhaps they were describing something astronomical, not symbolic. Solar storms, comet impacts, auroras so intense that they tore the horizon like swords of light. Phenomena that human eyes unable to understand translated into poetry and fear. Modern astronomers know that the planet has already faced major cosmic catastrophes, impacts that altered the global climate, erased species, moved oceans. What if one of these eras of destruction coincided with the dawn of human consciousness? It would be natural for the memories of this celestial violence to survive disguised as myth. The sky at war, the gods falling, the world in flames. In Norse mythology, Ragnarok begins with cosmic imbalance. The wolves Skjold and Hati devour the sun and the moon. But what if these wolves were metaphors for celestial bodies colliding, extreme eclipses, or eruptions that darkened the sky for years? The fire of Surtur, the giant that sets the world on fire, could echo volcanic explosions global, whose soot covered entire skies in prehistoric times. The seas that rise and devour the lands resemble seismic waves caused by planetary shocks. Everything that seems like fantasy could be a memory of a cosmic trauma experienced by our ancestors. Modern science discovers day after day that the Earth bears invisible scars, buried craters, layers of iridium, desert vitrification, all testimony to shocks so violent that they altered the destiny of life. These geological memories became over time spiritual memories. The collective unconscious, unable to forget, transformed destruction into right, catastrophe into wisdom. But Ragnarok isn't just about external forces. He also describes the collapse of an inner order. The sky at war is the human mind when it loses its axis, when the light of reason and shadow of instinct collide. Perhaps what the Norse recorded as divine battles were also visions. Interiors, archetypes colliding in the collective psyche, reflecting the same chaos as the cosmos lived outside. Carl Jung said that all mythology is a photograph of the soul in crisis. Ragnarok, then, would be the image of humanity going through its own dark night, the point where the old self must die so that another can be born. The sun and moon devoured, fire and ice confronting each other, the gods perishing. All this, it also happens within us. It is the dissolution of what we believe to be so that something vaster reveals itself. So perhaps the real battlefield was never Asgard, but the universe interior. Perhaps what the heavens witnessed as explosions and auroras, humans felt such as fear, loss, and purification. The cosmos and consciousness are moving mirrors. When one goes to war, the other bleeds together. And if so, Ragnarok is not a distant prediction. It is happening now, the every time an old world collapses inside us. But there is one detail that the old songs preserve. After destruction, life returns flourish. Because even in the wars of heaven, the deepest memory is always that of the light that survives. When the fire fell from the sky, it wasn't just the north that saw it, from one side of the planet to the other. Ancient civilizations recorded the same flash, each one on his tongue, each with the same astonishment. The Norse called it Ragnarok, the Hindus of Mahapralaya, the great collapse of the cosmos. The Mayans saw it as the end of one sun and the rise of another. And in ancient Egypt it was said that Ra fought against the serpent Apophis, symbol of the chaos that swallows the light. Cultures separated by oceans, but united by the same archetype, the war between the sky and the abyss. Could this all be coincidence? Or would they be fragments of a single memory that survived time, a memory global history of when the sky set the earth on fire? Myths are mirrors, and when several reflect the same fire, it is a sign that the fire was real. The Mahabharata, in India, speaks of divine weapons that shined like 1,000 suns and reduced cities in dust. Sumerian tablets depict gods in celestial chariots that cast rays of fire over mountains. Andean myths speak of a black sun that descended and devoured the heavens. Even in the Hebrew tradition, Genesis keeps a shadow of this event, the flood that purified the earth after the divine fury. It is as if all of humanity remembered the same cosmic trauma and translated it into according to your culture. Each people sang the same event in their own frequency. But perhaps the secret is not just in the event itself, but in what it caused inside us. After every catastrophe, something awakens. The survivors look up to the sky with awe and fear, but also with a new consciousness. It is at this moment that spirituality is born. Man stops being just flesh and becomes a witness to the mystery. Destruction becomes initiation. It's possible that Ragnarok was just that, the cosmic baptism of humanity, an astronomical event, perhaps a comet shower or an exploding star next, which burned the sky and awakened the collective soul. Modern science still finds traces of cosmic dust dating back 12,000 years, to the same time that legends about the fall of fire emerge across the globe. Could these fragments be the physical echo of what the myths called the War of the Gods? And there is something even deeper. The myths seem to dialogue with each other, as if they were pages of the same torn and scattered book. The purifying fire of Ragnarok is the same fire that renews the world in the Mayan Popol Vuh. The flood that ends the Norse cycle is the same one that reborn the world in the Epic of Gilgamesh. And always, after the chaos, a couple emerges, a remnant, a seed. Humanity begins again. Perhaps the real secret behind these narratives is not destruction, but continuity. Each civilization carries the code of rebirth, as if an ancient memory was imprinted. In our spiritual biology, when everything burns, plant again. Therefore, when we look at myths, we are not just studying the past, we are observing the footprints of a memory that still lives within us. Ragnarok does not belong to the Norse, just as the flood does not belong to the Sumerians. They are chapters of the same story, that of the universe remembering itself through humanity. What if this history is about to repeat itself? What if the cycle they feared is the same one that now starts? Moving again? If something inside you recognizes this echo, stay until the end. The answer may lie in the memory that your own soul carries. All mythology is a reminder of what we were and what we still are. When the ancients described Ragnarok, they perhaps talked less about the collapse of the heavens and more about the inner fall that every human being goes through when the divine within it starts to collapse. Because there is a time when each of us sees our own gods fall. The beliefs that supported the world fall apart, certainties dissolve like ice under the sun, and what remains is the echo of emptiness. This is the true battlefield of Ragnarok. Consciousness. Odin, the god of wisdom, faces fate knowing he will lose. He rides not to win, but to understand. Your surrender is the deepest symbol of the human soul, the courage to look at the inevitable and still follow. In every loss there is an initiation, at each end, a passage. The fall of the gods is the price of spiritual maturity. Carl Jung said that the gods have become diseases, because what was once sacred now lives inside the psyche. When the divine is forgotten, it does not die. It becomes ill in the form of shadow, fear, and desire. Therefore, Ragnarok is also the process of individuation, the collapse of the old ego into that the self, the deepest self, can emerge. The fire of Surtur that consumes Asgard is the same fire that purifies the soul, burning the internal idols until only the essence remains. In ancient times, man worshipped outside what he now seeks within. Today, our temples are mental, and our gods wear human masks. The god who roars in fury is the anger we cannot accept. The goddess who weeps is the love we repress. The serpent that rises from the sea is the unconscious asking for passage. Everything we deny returns as force and destroys the world we built for ourselves. Protect. That's why the myth talks about fire and ice, two extremes of the psyche, the passion that consumes and the fear that paralyzes. Between the two, the broken bridge and the lost balance. But in the midst of this collapse, something new is born. Lucidity. When the gods fall, humans awaken. When mythology falls apart, consciousness remakes itself. In spiritual tradition, the dark night of the soul is the deepest point of this fall. Everything that seemed eternal disappears. There are no oracles, no light, no promises. There is only silence, the same silence that precedes creation. In this abyss, the seeker realizes that the end is not punishment, it is transformation. Symbolic death is the price of rebirth. The ancient Norse knew no god escapes fate, because destiny is the very movement of existence. Odin falls, Thor perishes, Freyr is defeated, but from their blood a new world is born. So also in us. Each illusion that dies fertilizes consciousness. The human soul is the soil where the divine relearns to flourish. Perhaps the real Ragnarok happens whenever man dares to face his own abyss without escaping, because at that moment the sacred stops being belief and becomes experience. The fire that destroys is the same that reveals. The ice that imprisons is the same that preserves the germ of a new beginning. And when the last god falls, the silence that remains will be the first sound of a new creation interior. What if that's the real secret? That the apocalypse we fear out there is actually the awakening of the divinity that sleeps inside us. In the beginning, before the first light, there was only sound. Not a sound you hear with your ears, but a deep, silent, living vibration, the breath of the universe itself. Ancient traditions have called this vibration by many names. Om, Aum, Logos, Word, Odin's breath. But in all of them, there is the same principle. Everything was born from a frequency. The entire cosmos is music condensed into matter. When Norse myth speaks of the blowing of the Gjallarhorn, the horn that announces the end, perhaps is describing that same primordial sound resonating, because the universe began with one chord and will end with another, not as destruction, but as a change of tone. Modern science, interestingly, confirms this ancient view. Astrophysicists have discovered that each star, each planet, vibrates at a specific frequency. Space is not mute. It is a symphony of invisible waves, an ocean of sounds that shape the shape and destiny of everything that exists. Nikola Tesla said that if we wanted to understand the universe, we should think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. He was right. The microscopic strings that theoretical physics describes as the basis of all matter, they also play. Each particle is a note. And if every atom is sound, Ragnarok can be seen as the changing melody of the entire cosmos. In the esoteric tradition, it is believed that creation pulsates in harmonic cycles. When a note wears out, the universe needs to silence to find its tune again. It is what the ancients called the end of time and what science might call the end of time. Vibrational reset. Fire, ice, collapse, and rebirth are not punishments but adjustments, the universe tuning in again with the divine heart. Within us, the same process occurs. Every emotion is a vibration, every thought is a wave. When we accumulate fear, anger, sadness, our inner music becomes out of tune. Chaos ensues, our personal little Ragnarok. But if we learn to listen to the sound that vibrates behind the silence, everything is reorganized. The breath becomes an instrument, the heart becomes a drum, and the soul, a singer. The ancient Norse believed that after the end, the new world would emerge green, bathed in light, and that a new sun would rise. Perhaps this sun is the symbol of a new frequency. The vibration of consciousness awakens. When the fire of Surtur has purified the old universe, the primordial sound will echo again, reconstructing the cosmos as a song of love. In India, they say that the universe expands and retracts to the rhythm of cosmic sound. Each expansion is a day of Brahma, each retraction your night. The same applies to us. We create and destroy worlds inside our chests, in a dance constant of sounds and silences. What we call the end is just the measure between two notes. Therefore, listening becomes a sacred act. When we silence, we can hear the echo of creation within us. This is the real Gjallarhorn, not a war horn, but a calling of resonance. He invites us to align our vibration with the sound that sustains life. And perhaps the secret of Ragnarok is precisely this. The universe is not dying, it is changing its tune. And those who learn to hear the new sound will not fear the end, because they will know that each destruction is just the prelude to a new symphony. But then, if everything vibrates and everything returns to the same song, what, after all, is being remembered when the cosmos sings again? What if Ragnarok wasn't the end of a world, but the return of an ancient memory? A memory that matter itself carries, as if the universe had a memory. Modern physics is beginning to glimpse something that mystics have always known. Nothing happens. Lose. Every vibration, every thought, every light that ever existed is still recorded in some space-time point. The cosmos is an immense field of memory, an ocean where each particle remembers what it was. And perhaps myths are the waves of memory that return from times when the sky had bled, the fire fell, and human consciousness awoke. In many traditions there is talk of eras that preceded ours, civilizations that they knew what we forgot. Atlantis, Lemuria, Hyperborea, different names for the same longing. The ancient Norse said that before Asgard there was a realm of light where the gods and the men were one. When the imbalance arose, this world fell, and its memory was trapped in the all but human. Since then, every time the cosmic cycle approaches its end, this memory tries to return, and we call that prophecy. Prophecy is not prediction, it's a memory awakening. Therefore, when we feel that something is changing on Earth, perhaps it is just the echo of something that has happened before, in another era, in another shade of universe. Solar flares, magnetic storms, climate anomalies. Everything can be the reflection of a vibration that is repeating itself, a mirror of what we once were. What if Ragnarok is a reminder of an ancient cosmic war, not between gods, but between universal forces? Light and shadow competing for the harmony of the primordial sound? Perhaps humanity, as a living cell of the cosmos, participates in this same conflict within of yourself. When we fight between reason and faith, love and fear, we are repeating the battle that the universe struggles to balance itself. We are the field where infinity recognizes itself. And that's why the myth insists, after the end, the world is reborn, because the cosmos doesn't forget you. He just sleeps and dreams of new beginnings. Every catastrophe is a restoration, each fall a memory returning to the surface. The fire that destroys is the same one that records, in silence, the record of the new beginning. Perhaps the true meaning of Ragnarok is to remind us that we are part of the memory of the universe. Each heartbeat echoes a sound that existed before creation. Each tear contains the water of the first seas. Nothing we are is new. It just returns in a new form. And if so, perhaps the end of the world is not a tragedy at all. It's just the cosmos remembering who it is, through us. When the sound dies down and the fire recedes, only silence will remain. But this silence will not be empty. It will be full. The universe will have breathed again, and we will have breathed with it. Maybe the true meaning of the end is just listening. Listen to the space between the notes, the interval where creation prepares to be born again. Because nothing dies, everything just changes frequency. Ragnarok is not destruction, it is remembrance. It is the moment when the cosmos remembers itself and calls us back to the origin. The primordial sound, Heimdall's horn, Thor's thunder, these are different forms of the same call. Return home. And when this memory fully awakens, we will understand that we have been within the divine, and the divine has always been within us. Fire and ice, light and shadow, beginning and end, all are expressions of the same eternal breath. If this message touched something for you, subscribe and follow us. Your soul may be remembering the path. What if what we call the end is just the beginning of a memory that the soul has not yet forgot?